There is an important event horizon that correlates with brain development and brain programming. Out there in the ecology, we have a neutral zone. We have a pain zone that is laced and built on with fear. You have pain and then the fear of pain. And we have abundance. We have healing, joy, pleasure, well-being above that event horizon. Now, this domain in the ecology is actually a relationship. The identity, the pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being that is the ego, that is the I. And the pattern of behavior, the pattern of energy that is the ecology, that is the other, creates an interference pattern, creates a probability field, a possibility, a probability, and actuality field. And the identity, the ego, is attached to its pattern. It's the coherence of its pattern, its body, its mind, its concept of self. And the environment, the ecology, relates to that identity by strengthening and supporting and nurturing it, or by violating it, or by knocking on it, or by traumatizing and destroying that identity. Now, physicists explain that no energy in the universe is created or destroyed. It's simply transformed, transmuted, transcended. One identity, one pattern of energy, becomes another pattern of energy, and another pattern of energy. And in the relationship, in the relay of energy back and forth, the larger pattern of energy dictates in the law of resonance, in the law of mass, that ultimately the smaller identity, the smaller pattern of energy will attune and align with the same frequency, or will be transformed into an identity, into a pattern of energy that does attune, that does resonate with the same frequency as the larger ecology. Now you can see this in broad strokes with the phenomena of oxygen. Right now, the majority of the planet's surface creates excrement through the leaves of plants and trees that's called oxygen. So plants and trees absorb carbon dioxide and they release oxygen. Now humans absorb water and release urine. They absorb oxygen and release carbon dioxide. The waste product, or the exhale of plant matter, is oxygen. Now we are alive because our organism has attuned to thrive on that exhale, on that byproduct from this planet. Those organisms that did not attune to that environment are dead, are part of the long history of species on the planet that is now extinct. The majority of all patterns of energy that have been alive on this planet are now extinct. we are present because we attuned to the larger pattern of energy, which is determined by what the majority of plants produce. We can attune ourselves to survive on methane or something else, but if there isn't an atmosphere of methane, we simply die off as we attune to that other pattern of energy. Now, one could say then that part of the challenge of the species is to attune to the larger patterns of energy around us in a cooperative, in a sustainable relay of energy. An unsustainable relay of energy is one where one part of the system gives something to the other that helps it stay alive, but the other part of the system does not return something that helps it stay alive. Thus, the giver of energy dies off. And like all cancerous relationships, when the cancer effectively kills off its host body, the cancer dies a few moments after its host dies. You see, cancer in the human body is really excited about growth and dynamic reproduction, and goes about it with a great frenzy, producing more and more cancer cells much faster than the native organism can produce its cells. And so the cancer spreads, and the cancer spreads, and the cancer spreads. And eventually, at the moment of triumph, the cancer kills off the identity, the pattern of energy that is its host body. And there's a moment of tremendous celebration. Hooray, we're making progress. And then the host body dies. And the cancer has nothing else to feed on. And so the cancer dies. And so this type of relay, this type of exchange doesn't work very well in the long run. But in many ways, if there is any agency, if there's any freedom in the cancer, it's up to the cancer to a certain extent to decide not to grow as fast as possible at the expense of its host. It can, of course, but it's a short lifespan. You could have a very, very virulent cancer that just rips through the entire ecology of the body and in 3 days kills its host. And the cancer then has a terrific run for all of 3 days. And you can have a species that rips through the ecology in which it is native. And, billions of years forming that ecology and getting it in balance. And then a rapid reproduction, a rapid explosion in growth that is out of sync, that is unsustainable with the host body. And then the host body dies. The ecology, all those interconnections die. And with it, right after that, the cancer dies. And so we as a species get to decide, based on our rate of proliferation and the level of attunement with our host body, how much of a cancer we want to be, how fast of a cancer we want to be. Because if we're in complete violation with the host, the earth is our host. If we're in complete violation of the host, where everything that we do destroys the underlying ecology of that host, then we're a very toxic cancer, a very death-giving cancer to the ecology, to the host body. Now, if we reproduce very rapidly, every 2 people have 5 children, and then each of those 5 children have 5 children, and then each of those children have 5 children. If we reproduce in a protocol of extreme violation, we are then a very short-lived cancer. Because if every human being, for example, every American, will generate 1,500 metric tons of CO2, 102 tons of garbage in a landfill, and 90,000 gallons of gasoline consumed directly and indirectly in living the lifestyle, transporting the lifestyle, manufacturing the goods for the lifestyle, and transporting the goods for said lifestyle. We then have an explosion where 150-pound body is producing 102 tons of toxic waste for the ecology. Because we take energy out of the ecology, we transform it into stuff we don't know what to do with. Then rather than having the decency to say, gee, we're creating a lot of energy that we don't know what to do with, we sully the raw energy rather than sully the consciousness that creates lots of energy we don't know what to do with. And we call all this stuff garbage. And we say, we don't know what to do with garbage. And someone says, well, let's dig a big hole in the ground. Or let's burn it. Let's put it all into the atmosphere. Then we'll get rid of it. We don't have to deal with it. And, the trees can deal with acid rain. The trees can deal with this and that. The groundwater can become toxic. Or we can just cut more and more trees down to make more and more landfills. So we can expand the consumption of ecological energy and the exportation of non-ecological energy. Because if oil leaks kill the ecology, oil spills in the ocean kill the ecology, and landfills kill the ecology, and heavy metals and toxic chemicals incinerated kill the ecology, meaning the plants that breathe that air are not as happy as the plants that breathe carbon dioxide from a cow or from a Native American before Western civilization accelerated the consumption of energy and the replication of the species, of, in effect, the cancer to the original host body. So when we create a cancerous relationship with our ecology, it's a sign of incompetence. Because a highly competent person doesn't start hacking away at the tree that they're in. If you want to know what a competent forester looks like, they're not cutting the branch they're on with their chainsaw. And if they do, they're not surprised when they fall to the ground with the branch they're standing on. We know enough to say that doesn't seem like a good idea. That doesn't seem very intelligent. It doesn't seem very competent. But in a complex system with a very limited education in ecology, I mean, how many formal hours of ecological literacy have you received in your entire stay in this cult? So if there is an interdependent relationship where we depend on the ecology for water, for air, for food, for warmth, for the absence of certain concentrations of extreme chemicals and environments, if we depend on those things as gifts from the ecology, while at the same time we are destroying the mechanism by which the ecology gives us those things. You know, wetlands purify the water so that we have pure water. If we destroy the wetlands, we also destroy the access to pure water. Trees give us access to clean oxygen. If we destroy the trees, and even worse, if we destroy the trees by burning them in a slash and burn dynamic to produce hamburgers by grazing cattle for 2 or 3 years after a rainforest is cut down, if we destroy that ecology, then by actually producing smoke in the air that increases global warming through the insulating effect of that smoke in the atmosphere. If we depend on lower sea levels, but we melt the ice caps more rapidly, you can see that this is a sign of incompetence. It's a sign of stupidity, the antithesis of intelligence. Because no one with true knowing and true intelligence cuts off the branch they're standing on and expects a pay raise. They expect to be dead. And with some of these cycles that take hundreds or thousands of years to, enact, then they expect their grandchildren to be dead. Now, if you expect your grandchildren to be dead, but you have a lot of them, you realize there's a gap in intelligence. The equation doesn't add up. The choice to have a lot of children and grandchildren from an intelligent point of view doesn't make sense unless you expect them to have a meaningful and sustainable life. If you expect them all to die from the actions you and your parents are involved in, then it's an act of murder. We're going to create life and then we're going to kill it. As effectively as putting a time bomb in the future in the village where your future family will reside. I'm going to have a family, let them have children, and then let them have children, and then I'll blow them all up with this time bomb that I'm setting it now for 100, 200, 300 years in the future to murder my own family, my own species. And the question is that something that a sustainable, intelligent organism does, or is that something that a cancer does? Because when a cancer destroys its host body and then produces lots of children, when it procreates rapidly in a pattern of energy that also kills the host body, then at the point that the cancer is the most populous in its relationship with the host body, the entire relationship collapses because there's no more host body to toxify. There's no more host body to consume, and you have a collapse of the sustainable relationship and a death of the host body. So all of this is creating pain. Incompetence leads to pain. Pain and incompetence leads to scarcity, which leads to pain. And pain and scarcity and incompetence lead to the activation of the reptilian brain, the fight, flight, freeze protocol of the sociopathic crocodile. So below this point, meaning when pain reaches a certain point, the reptilian brain is activated. When the reptilian brain is activated, the human brain is deactivated. And so you have a connection between the empathic brain and the reptilian brain. When you have abundance, when you have joy, healing, happiness, abundance, you have the birth of humanity. You have the birth of the humanitarian brain. You have the birth of the empathic brain. It is the predominant program, and it is a symptom of competency. When you have the reptilian brain, the fight, flight, freeze brain out of pain and the fear of pain, you're dealing with high levels of incompetence. Now, to heal high levels of incompetence, you have to diagnose the disease. The disease is stupidity, is ignorance. The fear and pain are also diseases. But the source is incompetency. The source is always incompetency. A competent relationship of energy yields more and more sustainable mutual well-being with more and more grace. A competent relay of energy yields more and more energy with more and more sustainable well-being. That's what a competent relationship is. And so there we have the metric. How much pain are we in? How much incompetency is present in the relationship? Now, since the human side of this relationship is the one with free will and agency, trees don't say we're going to defend ourselves or we're going to commit suicide or things like that. You have the more static element of the ecology that's staying true to the laws, to the rules that led to the entire universe being created out of nothing, the size of a pea. And then we have the cult dynamic. And this cult dynamic determines it determines most of the identity of a human being. Why does this person eat pork chops and this person eat vegan kale smoothies and this person eat fresh berries and this person chew coca leaves and this person drink themselves in a stupor every day with alcohol? Why? Well, you have a tremendous amount of cult influence. The habits of those around, the norms, the status quo. And you not only have this copying dynamic, but you have a pressure to become one or be the other in a scarcity dynamic where the other is the enemy, where the other is to be feared. So how do you develop a new identity, a new pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being, when as soon as you develop a new identity, you're now the other, you're not one of us, in a dynamic as a social mammalian species that is interdependent, where we need one another, where we need the cult, where we need the tribe to survive, to feel secure, to have love and belonging, to have self-esteem, to develop our talents, to bring those talents meaningfully and abundantly into the world, to become part of something bigger. How do we connect with the other in this dynamic? And it's not clear, because as soon as we become other, as soon as we are not normal in a fear-based cult, you are something to be frightened of by the group that is normal, that has norms, that has conformed to the norm, that has fit into the identity. The individual identity has fit into the cult identity. So now you have a norm established. And everything that's different is not us, it's not okay, it's not good. Now, we have two sources of feedback then. We have the source of validation and feedback from the cult, which is a self-referential, very simple equation. You're like us or you're not like us. Here, you're like us. You're one of us. Here, you're not like us. You're not one of us. We will reward you for being like us. We will punish you for being not like us. So you want to eat kale smoothies when we're all eating hot dogs, we'll all make fun of you. We'll all make sure you know that we do not like this direction. On the other hand, we're all in a kale smoothie group of vegans who believe in this and this and this, and you're in that group and you want to have a hamburger? Well, we'll all make fun of you. Because we have this identity and you have that identity. You're not one of us. And because you're not one of us, we will not help you survive, be secure in that survival, experience love and belonging. You are other, in a fear of the other type dynamic. Now, the other source of feedback is, of course, ecology. And our bodies are part of the ecology. Without the ecology, our bodies would not exist, could not exist, and do not exist. Every moment of every day, our bodies are connected to the ecology. Right now, we're breathing the ecology. And to the extent that we have stewarded and those around us have stewarded the ecology well, the breath is beautiful and clear. To the extent that we have violated our ecology, the breath is unclear. Now, to the extent that we have put toxins in our body, we have allergies, we have reactivity, we have discomfort. To the extent that we have attuned our body to the ecology, we experience vitality. We experience a living, interconnected relationship. Now, the problem comes on an individual level when the cult identity, when the cult pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being is diametrically opposed from the underlying ecology. This is the same problem that a student has when their teacher's dogma is out of sync with the experiential reality. When if one follows the teacher, one gets a good grade, but one fails at living a meaningful life. But if one lives a meaningful life and puts this forth within the classroom, one gets a low grade and is punished by the cult that ranks you based on your grade in school and who was grading you. So you have a grade of schools, and then you have a grade of professors and teachers within that school, and then you have the grade. And so if you get a C- or an F and are flunked out of a high-ranking school by a famous professor who's professing highly sanctioned dogma or whatever the protocol is, now you are viewed with apathy or with contempt, with fear and rejection, and no, we don't want anything to do with you. No, that's not part of the cult dogma. On the other hand, one might experience a more vital life. One might have a more dynamic relationship with the underlying ecology as one loses rank, as one is treated with contempt. And this is the way that a cult maintains its identity. It's a self-referential loop. It's not an ecological loop. Because in an evolving, growing culture, as the ecology changes, the culture responds and is alive in a relationship. In a dogmatic cult, as the ecology changes, there is a fundamentalism, there's a dogma, there's a hanging on. I'm not letting this go. This is our identity. No one's going to take it away from us. You know, the whales are going extinct, but we are a whaling clan. Our ancestors 500 years ago killed whale when there was nothing else available but whale oil to give light. And we're not going to change. What happens when you kill every single whale? Are you going to change then? How will you kill whales that are extinct because you killed them all? What of your ancestors then? You know, your ancestors didn't kill every single whale, and your ancestors didn't have as many children, and your ancestors didn't live as long. But you changed all those things, but you won't change this. This is our identity. And I'm sticking to it. And so you have this pattern. Now, the pain of the relay, the pain of the relationship is measured by competency. In highly competent, highly intelligent systems and relationships, you have very small amounts of energy, very small amounts of time, money, and natural resources, yielding high levels of sustainable human well-being in sustainable relationships with the ecology. In very low levels of intelligence and competency, you expend vast amounts of time, money, and natural resources to make people miserable and violate the relationship with the ecology in such a way that your own species and your own way of life is doomed through calculus, through mathematics. That a physicist will say, yeah, if you continue to consume $100,000 a year from a $1 million bank account and put nothing in it while growing the account by 5% a year, 50,000. In other words, you're consuming twice as much as your investment returns. You're cutting down twice as many trees as you're planting. You will end up dead. You will end up broke. You will end up divorced. You're attacking the marriage 3 times faster than you're feeding and nourishing it. Is there any physicist who will look at that dynamic and say, yeah, that's going to work out? Just give it enough time. Let it go into overdraft. Go into debt. Build up intense hate and resentment, and then your marriage will be saved. No. This is the fundamental metric of intelligence. And we don't learn it in an education. And that's the problem. Because when you call ignorance and stupidity an education, then it's the cruelest joke. Because then you're miserable, and more miserable doing the things that you were taught, and no one around you will give you the punchline, which is, this was all lies. And so you have to continuously decide to abandon the cult and express and face the fear of losing the support of a dogmatic cult and their ability to help you to survive, to feel secure, to have love and belonging, self-esteem within the cult, or losing the underlying relationship with the ecology of which we are all innately dependent and connected, both individually and as a species, both now and in the future, in the dynamic of procreation. So when we are in pain due to scarcity, due to incompetence, due to ignorance, we cannot process pain at that intensity. So our empathic brain shuts down, our transcendent brain shuts down. We still have access to some degree of rationality, though we may dull that with anesthetics and drugs and stuff. We move into the reptilian brain. The reptilian brain is not human. It is dehumanizing. We lose our humanity. And a reptile survives, and that's all it's good at, is survival. A reptile survives by killing and fighting that which is smaller than it, by running from what is bigger than it, and freezing when neither of those two are available. The reptilian brain is a sociopathic brain. Crocodiles are not intended to have loving relationships. The reptilian brain is not built for loving relationships. It's not built for ecological relationships. It's built for short-term fear, pain-based survival in a reptilian environment, in a sociopathic environment. That's all the reptilian brain is good at. When we enter the reptilian brain, because the pain gets too high, because our competency is too low, when we enter the reptilian brain, we dehumanize ourselves. We lose our humanity. The reptilian brain is not human. It is subhuman. The empathic brain is human, but the empathic brain is in far too much pain to predominate in the areas that we are incompetent and in scarcity around core human needs: survival, security, love, and belonging. In order to live in a world of human beings that have empathy for animals, for the environment, and for one another, one has to learn competency. In order to learn competency, one has to break through the veil of one's cult to understand the physics of sustainability. Because the cults that are predominating on the planet today are not in a sustainable relationship with the ecology. They're in a cancerous relationship with the ecology. And remember, the greatest triumph of every cancer is the last day before the host body is killed. Because at that moment, the cancer has never had it so good. There are more cancer cells in the body than there's ever been. The body is weaker than it has ever been. It is easier for the cancer to proliferate on the last day before killing its host than it's ever been, because the host body is so weak, is so out of sync. The cancer has won the battle. But the next day, when the host body collapses under the weight of a parasitic, unsustainable relationship, the very next day is the end of the cancer. We won, we won, we won, we won. There's no food. There's nothing to feed. We don't have another host. We have not prepared another victim. And so we're dead. And that particular experiment in life's algorithm finished. That one didn't work. Yet another time in all the chance-based iterations, cancer doesn't work. Cancer kills both the cancer and the host body, and then you have to start all over again. At how many iterations does it take for life to find a symbiotic, sustainable relationship between the organisms and the ecology of which those organisms are a part? That is the question. How many iterations does it take? How much death, how much time, how much waste does that take? Now, to find one's humanity, one must find one's competency in order to find one's capacity to create well-being, in order to find one's beauty, truth, and goodness. How much competence does it take to find one's humanity? To create the abundance, because the bud of consciousness, the bud of the brain, is like the bud of a daffodil. When the frost covers the ground, the daffodil stays in the bud. As spring comes and the frost thaws, it puts up little green leaves that are capable of withstanding that level of temperature, that cold. As the sun comes, as the spring comes warmer and warmer, the daffodil can bloom fully, reaching its full potential, sending out beautiful fragrance. And the exact same is true in a cult, in a cultural, in an ecological environment. As knowledge and competency leads to a warm temperature of safety, of security, of abundance, as the rational brain creates an excess of energy in a formation that can fulfill our human needs to survive, to feel secure, to have love and belonging, to develop self-esteem, to develop our talents, to contribute those talents to community and create abundance and be part of something bigger than ourselves. We move into the joy, into the beauty of empathy, of the empathic brain, which creates trust and greater partnership and synergy. As we create trust, greater partnership, and synergy, we move into the level of abundance and safety in which the transcendent brain can blossom, the one that remembers, the one that restores the relationship between ourself and the larger ecology, the one that reawakens the knowledge that we are a part, that we are a dot that forms the sphere, that we are an integral part of the sphere of which we belong, to which we belong, and that the sphere and our relationship with the sphere is a reflection of our intelligence, of our competency, measured by the efficiency with which we turn time, money, and natural resources into sustainable human well-being. This is the birth of a technology, of a pattern, a technology of identity, a technology of thinking, of perceiving, of relating, that in turn gives rise to a whole new level of abundance, a whole new level of joy, of sustainable fun, as we transcend the identity and remember, re-put together, the ecological identity, the larger self of which we are a small part. And in doing so, connect with the divine, which is the field, the mathematical field of the larger ecology, of which we are a part. When the part voluntarily relates and attunes to the whole, when the part voluntarily relates and attunes to the whole, we now have higher degrees of sustainability, higher degrees of intelligence, higher degrees of grace, which leads to more abundance, more safety, which leads to more sustainability, which creates the temperature, the environment for our awareness of interconnectivity to blossom and become more satisfying than the illusion of isolation created by the cult framework of language, in which every cult inoculates the identity of its people at birth and in education and childhood. into feeling completely separate and walled off from the ecology, from the past, from the future, and from all of the thousands upon thousands of cults and cultures that have existed in the entire world. That fear of the other that is innate to pain. Because when you have a dysfunctional relationship, it is a painful relationship. When it is a painful relationship, you associate the pain with other. The relationship isn't working. The other is part of the relationship. Now, particularly in a blame-shame cult, the goal is to push the problem onto the other. Nature is the problem. This cult is the problem. That cult is the problem. My cult is the problem. You're the problem. The misfit is the problem, the one who isn't fitting into the cult. The scapegoat, they're the problem. And there is then a fear, having projected the flaw in the relationship, in the relay of energy. That's a protocol flaw. Having projected that innately onto other, then anything that's different becomes suspicious, becomes frightening. You've dyed your hair blue. That's not what we do in our cult. You're to be treated with extra suspicion. You're not going to get a pay raise. We can't have these anomalous mutations growing and disrupting the status quo. You're eating a different diet from the rest of us. You have a different belief from the rest of us. We've got to attack it as a virulent immune system attacking all change, which, of course, is necessary for life. Life is an evolutionary process. Life is change. Death is crystallization. As soon as the heart stops beating, there is death and decay. Change, movement, is life. Ossification, dogma, the fear of the unknown is death. Now, even these, there is a balance between all polarity. Oh, life is good, death is bad. No, that's more dogma. You have polarity in relationship. Black and white through the prism of perception give birth to the entire rainbow of color. You take away black, you take away white, there is no rainbow. You take away death, you take away life, there is no lifetime. It's this space in between polarity. Masculine, feminine, yin, yang, hot, cold. It's the space in between. It's the space in between where 99.9% of the possibility field resides. Two poles, extreme east, extreme west, and a whole world exists between those continuums. We as individuals are challenged to decide when and where to attune to an unsustainable cult that is effectively a cancer on its host body, and when and where to attune to an ecology that is viewed as other and therefore frightening, to an ecologically illiterate, dogmatic cult with a self-referential dogmatic identity. We are this because we were this, And we were this because that was the right thing to do. And so now we're this because we were that. And that's why we are. A self-referential loop based on the past cannot respond to a dynamic ecology, economically, emotionally, ecologically. One has to relate to a sustainable, intelligent future. We want this sustainable, intelligent future. The mathematics of such a future suggest this. We need to plant 10 billion trees. Now there's 8 billion people. If each of them plant 10 trees, we're responding. If we plant 10 billion trees, we can move into an environment that captures more carbon than we generate. But where do you get that? You get it from the future. You get it from where you want to end up. You don't get it from the past because no one's ever done that before. And your cult has been busy cutting trees, not planting trees. So if you want to belong with your cult, you have to cut some trees. You have to consume some things. You have to directly and indirectly generate that 90,000 gallons of gasoline and generate some of the 1,500 metric tons of CO2, because that's what everyone in your cult is doing. But if you want to relate to a sustainable future that does not involve the death of the cancer and its host body, where the cancer transforms into a sustainable relationship, then we have to look to the mathematics of the future. What does it take? What does it take to be part of that future? Could every person on the planet plant 10 trees? Does every person have the opportunity, access to seedlings, a place to put the trees? Do we understand how and why this is necessary? Do we have the competency to transcend our cult? In a pain environment that is so thick that we are frightened of the unknown, which means we're frightened of change, which means we're frightened of planting trees because although it seems to make sense, we've never done that before. What does that mean? I thought I was supposed to get a raise or buy a more expensive car. That's what is praised. No one's asking how many trees did you plant today. I don't want to be further isolated in my cult. On the event horizon, we have levels of ignorance that leads to levels of pain that trigger and stimulate and amplify the reptilian brain, which is a dehumanizing, numbing, isolating experience for the identity of each individual occupying that pattern, that template. Above the event horizon, we have competency. We have science-based ecology that leads to abundance in the fulfillment of human needs: survival, security, love and belonging, self-esteem, the development of talents and gifts, the bringing of those gifts into the world, and the becoming of something, the becoming part of something bigger than ourselves. Incompetence, pain and fear, and the reptilian sociopathic brain. Competence, information, intelligence, abundance, leading to pleasure, the opening up, leading to a state of grace, a state of pleasure. Grace is low energy consumption for high yield. That's what grace is. When someone moves gracefully through space, they use very little energy in order to accomplish a great deal. And we find it beautiful because they have competency. They're connected to their body, and through the connection to their body to the ecology, they have competency. They have grace. As intelligence rises, as grace rises, as the abundance rises that is a byproduct of intelligence, the efficiency with which energy is transformed into sustainable human well-being, we have the flowering of the empathic and the transcendent brain. The empathic and the transcendent brain have two questions. Who's in the most pain? How can I help? What part of the ecology is in the most pain? How can I respond? What place on the planet is in the most trauma and pain? How can I help? How can I love? Who's in the most pain? How can I help? These are the questions of an empath. These are the questions of anyone who enters the empathic region of the brain. The dance of unity, the awareness of interconnectivity, which is a scientific reality, but is an egotistical blind spot. The reptilian brain does not understand how it's connected to the gazelle in Ethiopia or the tiger in South Africa. The reptilian brain is myopic by nature, is separate by nature, and survives with a fight, flight, freeze, fear, pain-based protocol. Letting go of some of that fear, moving into more grace, moving through rationality, the science. If we want more clean air, we have to plant more trees, preserve more parks, stop spraying herbicides. If we want less allergies, we need less toxicity, less garbage being incinerated into our air. This is our journey. This is our choice. The ecology is what it is. It's ultimately up to the free agent, the conscious mind, the cancer, to decide whether to sustain an unsustainable protocol with its host body, leading to mutual destruction, or a sustainable protocol with its host body by becoming more and more aware, by transcending the individual identity, to feel and be aware of the circle, to become one with the circle.